wild animals. Good thinking.
We'll call this meeting to order. Will you please rise and salute the flag with me, please? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll read the announcement. There will be a meeting of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission on Tuesday, October 17, 2023, at 1 p.m. at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, 11 Hazen Drive, Compton, New Hampshire, 03301. The public is entitled to attend all commission meetings, and when recognized by the chairman, the public may speak on any item on the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to limit public comment to the extent necessary for the orderly conduct of the meeting. Action items. Number 1, approval of the September 19, 2023 commission meeting.
Make a motion.
Motion to
Accept the
approve.
minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and second to accept the minutes of September 19, 2023 commission meeting. Minutes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stands approved. We'll go on to number 2, the consent agenda. The following items have been grouped together and noticed as consent agenda items to expedite action on routine matters, which may not require public discussion. Commission members may remove certain items if further public input or discussion is deemed necessary. 2A, approval to accept a donation of $650 from the Nash Stream Camp Owners Association for deposit into the small gifts and donations account. There was a note attached thanking the department for keeping the roads and trails clear and safe. 2B, approval to accept the donation of $25 in memory of Peter Abea, avid sportsman of Springfield, New Hampshire, from Howard and Cynthia Anderson of Springfield, New Hampshire, for deposit into the small gifts and donations account. 2C, excuse me, approval to accept a donation of $500 in memory of Scott LaCrosse, retired District 5 lieutenant who passed away on April 2nd, 2019, from his wife, Kim LaCrosse. This donation will be used to purchase security cameras for the Sewell's Falls storage facility. 2D, approval to accept the donation of $5,725 from Granite State Whitetails to be utilized to purchase a Van Galen fish egg trawler equipped with a landlocked salmon egg wheel for the use in the New Hampton hatchery. Do I hear a motion to accept items 2A through 2D? Commissioner Temple, Commissioner Green seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to accept 2A through 2D? I have one question of Diane, if she's here. The $5,725 coming from the Granite State Whitetails going into fish habitat.
I have no shame on my funding.
Was there any earmarks on the money, the donation? Was there any earmarks? It kind of sounds like that should have gone to game instead of fish feed. I'm just.
No, they called me with an opportunity for an education aspect of, do you need something? I heard that fisheries could utilize some funding, and I gave them a multitude of projects. They liked this particular one because it's one of our really highly sought after demonstrative events when we do take kids and adults at tours at the New Hampton hatchery, because we do have one for trout.
Yep.
And so now that salmon are there, this would be beneficial because right now they pick them all by hand. And so they loved the idea, and she proceeded to ask her folks and get approval from her committee. And so she called me last week to say that they have approved the opportunity to purchase it and to make the donation to us. So, yeah, not last week, sorry, a couple weeks ago.
Thank you, Dan.
We have no ill will towards Diane. But they did also reach out to the Wildlife Division, and we're in the process of, they're gonna be giving us a donation as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had some additional funding that they were trying to utilize.
Okay, it just kind of looked a little odd to me, whitetails.
I have friends
Kind of
everywhere, Commissioner.
The truth is, Commissioner Stoll, that when it comes to money, Diane's very quick. And Dan he is struggling, but he's trying to keep up.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of accepting Articles 2A through 2D, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that stands approved. Informational items, we move on to. Number 1, financial statement from Kathy. Everybody got actually three
You
copies.
received all three for this fiscal year.
We're all caught right up.
You're all caught up. Can I
Any-
entertain any questions?
Anybody got any questions of Kathy on financial statement? Seeing none, I guess not. Kathy, you did a real good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 2, the Wildlife Division's game program will present background information regarding a cooperative research project with the University of New Hampshire, which will aim to quantify fisher survival rates, space use, and cause-specific mortality. Andy's running this one.
We get the electronics up and running here, bear with me.
No, that's John.
Statute of limitations.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Thanks for the opportunity to share this information item. Excited to bring you up to speed on our plans to pursue a study looking at the survival and cause-specific mortality of fisher in New Hampshire. So I'll go over the objectives. To estimate the survival and identify cause-specific mortality in fisher, and to measure the health of fisher in New Hampshire. There are environmental factors on the landscape that we believe are likely impacting fisher. These include disease such as canine distemper, toxicants in the environment such as rodenticide. The problem is we really have no information on the degree of what that's happening. So this study is really designed to try to identify some of those possible mortality causes that may be impacting fisher on the landscape. In addition, we'll identify and measure home range size, habitat use, patterns of dispersal. You know, this is all the type of data that you can collect when you put a GPS transmitter on an animal. Quantify space use, habitat association, and dispersal. So as you're aware, there's currently an ongoing study going on fur bears in New Hampshire using camera trapping. The objective of that study is to identify distribution and abundance of different fur bearer species, including fisher. That study is not designed to collect some of those vital rates that really play a role in the trajectory of the population. So this study will kind of piggyback onto that study and gather some of that information we need regarding the survivability of fisher and mortality factors. So the approach will be to live capture fisher from January through March and affix a satellite-linked GPS collar. We're going to start out with 3 initial study areas. These will include a study area in the southeast part of the state, the southwest part of the state, and in an area immediately north of the White Mountains, so kind of that C2 kind of E unit. And over time, the study areas may expand from there. I think it will largely depend on our ability to catch the number of fisher we're looking to catch, which is pretty lofty. We're looking to maintain a population of 100 fishers wearing radio collars over a 4-year period. So we'll collect mortalities, we'll perform necropsies, histopathology, as well as toxicology. And that effort will be used to meet the objectives related to survival and health. And we'll analyze location, activity data to look at those objectives related to habitat use, dispersal, and home range. So where we're at. So UNH and Pat and myself, as well as Remington Mole and Dr. Dave Needle from UNH, sat down and we kind of fleshed out a proposal. So we've got a proposal in hand. We then applied for an application to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to secure federal PR monies for the research. The turnaround was very quick. We were awarded that grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to expend PR dollars for this research. So now we're in the process of, we need to finalize the cooperative project agreement between New Hampshire Fish and Game and UNH, and we're in the final stages of that. And we also need to seek approval from the fiscal committee and governor and council. And I did want to mention that this project is being funded entirely by PR money and being matched by cost share from UNH. There is no cost to the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department to conduct this research. So that was kind of a brief overview of what we're looking to do, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are.
Andy, could you go back to slide number 1, please? Or,
That one?
yeah, go down. What's the difference between habitat use and space use?
So habitat use is more going to be a more finer scale look at very specific habitat features, whereas space use is going to be a more broader scale look at a larger landscape that I think would involve topography and some of those other factors that might influence animal use. But you know, the habitat aspect, I think it's just a finer scale look from a broader, compared to a more broader look.
Oh, thank you. Anybody got any questions of Andy?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a question.
Commissioner Anton?
What is the dollar amount of that grant?
So the dollar amount of this study is $1.7 million, $1.6 million. So 1.2 of that is PR dollars, and the UNH match is $400,000.
Any other questions of Andy?
If I may, and when on the time frame, we have a couple master students that we're stacking up, or is it
So,
PhD, 4
This
years?
actually isn't going to be a master's or PhD student. It's going to, Remington Mole and Dr. Need will be the core investigators. They will utilize a lot of student help, student research technicians, but it actually is not going to be a graduate or doctoral study. And a lot of that's a few reasons there. One of it's really, I think, the time frame. You know, 4-year study, that kind of, you know, you could double up on master students if you wanted, but you know, when you have an extended study like that, it makes it a little tougher in a master's program, because the master's program is typically 2 years. And you know, for whatever reason, they just felt that their preference was to approach us with them being the sole investigators.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Commissioner Temple?
Thank you. Andy, just to help clarify from the notes here, I'm not familiar with the term PR. What?
Oh, Pittman Robinson Fund. So the monies that are the excise tax on firearms and ammunition, all that money that is then distributed back out to the states by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for work related to conservation of wildlife.
So this would be quite a study at 1.7 million to study fisher calves over the next 4 years.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Commissioner,
Me?
yes, you.
I can't hear it in your voice, so I'll say it, but I'm pretty excited for you.
It's exciting.
And so thank you for working to get this grant, because I think it's been a question that, as long as I've been a commissioner, has been on the table. And so to get that feedback and to get such a sizable project, it makes me want to make sure I stick around for 4 years to see the results of that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay, Wildlife Division will provide a presentation on coyotes. Dan and Pat.
We'll see if you hear the excitement in my voice too. So Pat's going to give the presentation. I'm just going to kind of introduce it. So As you likely remember, I believe it was back at the April commission meeting when we were going over the wildlife, the rule proposals. There was discussion about coyotes, potential changes to seasons. The commission had asked that the wildlife division come back at a later date with some more information. So we had Pat Tate, in particular, our fur bear project leader, had done a literature review. He compiled the current information that we collect on coyotes. He's going to give you a summary of that information, and then at the end, we'll give you a few things that we're looking to do moving forward for opportunity to collect additional information that can better inform any decisions that we might make moving forward. Today's presentation is an information item because, again, we're just presenting information that we have. We're not presenting any proposals for any season changes. This is purely information that we currently have, some literature review, and then some information on stuff that we would like to move forward with to collect additional information. That additional information that we'd be looking to collect most of it would likely have to go through the rulemaking process to begin with. We would hammer out the specifics of exactly what we're looking to do through that process, and you're all very familiar with that. So we'll go through public hearings and initial information items for the commission. So just to kind of frame that, and then once the presentation's over, Pat and myself and Andy, if necessary, are happy to answer any questions. I'm going to turn it over to Pat.
With that, for the record, my name is Patrick Tatum, I'm a fur bear biologist. I thank the Commission for their time for hearing this information, and I think the Commission will be very interested, judging by the attendance in the room and questions I've received from the public over time. The image in front of you, that is an eastern coyote, its scientific name, Canis latrans variant. Canis latrans variant, and the main part of it is because the genetics of it is part wolf and also part domestic dog. There's been arguments on the landscape over the last 8 years or so. It should be called by other common names because of its genetics, and there's been debate among those groups about the name. For a while, you heard the name coy wolf. There's a number of people saying it should be called coy wolf because it wolf. The slide you're looking at in front of you is developed by a researcher by the name of Roland Case. You see that the New England area has, including New Hampshire, has some dots on it. And New Hampshire, Vermont, they supply genetic samples of eastern coyotes in this region. Roland Case did genetic work, and the genetic work he did is what led some people arguing about coy wolf. And I'll point out that he later put out a publication saying coy wolf was not a thing, and that it takes thousands of years for speciations to occur, so that it was not a term that it was Canis latrans variant. The interesting thing about our eastern coyote, if I would like to be able to put the pointer, but our LCD screen doesn't allow the pointer to go up there. But on the upper right, you can see an arrow that's curved, goes up by James Bay in Canada, and then back down in the United States. When that occurred, that front of we call the front of coyote dispersal was 5 times faster than south of the Great Lakes. And it was a mixing zone with wolves. So for those up close, you can see that there's some Great Lakes wolf genetics, and there's some, I believe it in the yellow says gray wolf genetics in the coyotes that occupy the eastern part of New England and New Hampshire. That, in the study that they came out of, the title of that was Rapid Adaptive Evolution of Northeastern Coyotes via Hybridization with Wolves. So it occurred 5 times faster, and that's why wolves came into northern New Hampshire and northern New England quicker than it did southern New England. It also allowed these animals to have slightly larger body sizes, slightly more efficient at predating deer, and these animals used the forest slightly better than the western counterparts. So with that, deer vulnerability varies by region within the United States and within the region of New Hampshire. Part of that regional variation corresponds with snow depth and condition. The deeper the snows, especially when eastern coyotes can get on top of that snow, they can take advantage of predating on deer. the duration of winter. So as time goes on and winter grows longer and a deer's nutrition succumbs or declines, they become more vulnerable to eastern coyote predation. Food availability, browse, that's important for deer. If they have a weakened system, they're more vulnerable to predation from browse. Alternatively, food availability for eastern coyotes. If it is a high year of things such as snowshoe deer, you can see less predation on white-tailed deer because the coyotes will go towards what's more abundant on the landscape. So habitat quality, stand dynamics, deer wintering yards, so our foresters and whatnot, have a large impact on what can be done. And I'll point out here in New Hampshire, we do have a forester that works in the northern stands with large landowners for habitat quality of deer wintering yards. Deer density. High deer density places can have, how do I want to say, different issues with predation, and depending on availability and all the browse availability and all those issues, the deer density alone can affect what the predation is on them. And then naturally predator density, which I think many in the room can understand that aspect pretty easy. So predation of deer in studies, most by coyotes, however some predation by bobcats and bears. The predation of deer varies during the winter by age class. Fawns and very large bucks can tend to be more likely to be predated upon because of their condition going into winter. Now, the fawn survival, which is the opposite of predation, is highly variable because predation is highly variable. And one study in Georgia, you see in front of you, coyotes cause 68% of predation and 52% of all mortalities. If we move up to Pennsylvania, it was 36.7%, or 19 of 49 predation events. In Pennsylvania, the other predation events were bobcat and black bear. And I'll point out, in Pennsylvania, that study, there was a difference between farmland and forest land. The issue with the forest land was overbrowsing in less areas to hide fawns during the fawning period. So, breaking down throughout the North America range, fawn survival was found to be lower in the southeast, higher in the Midwest and New England. And they found that predation was higher in areas with very high deer density, and a lot of that issue is habitat quality. Those in front of you, the rest of us in the room can't see it. It is a picture there of the predation rates on fawns. In Maine, I believe, for those of you that can see, it's 28%. And then when you go down south, it varies different. So one thing that was found is fawn survival rates vary with or without predators. There's natural causes of mortality. You can have compensatory mortality by coyotes, meaning that you're going to lose a number of fawns, and they're compensating, they're taking those animals. And with eastern coyote predation, you can also have additive. Additive can occur when you have heavy, deep snows, areas with low habitat quality, and or heavy issues with food availability for the adults, or low alternative prey for eastern coyotes. There's mixed conclusions regarding predation effects of coyote on deer population growth. The image you see on the right there is a study by the person who did it with Bergina. I do not recall the title of it at this moment. I do have the study. And Bergina looked at county level deer take data in the states you see up there outlined, so it's Florida, Carolinas, Ohio, and New York, and one other, I believe. So concluded that eastern coyotes were not affecting deer density. And I'll say this is at the 60,000 foot view. And this article created a significant amount of debate in the peer-reviewed scientific journals. A person by the name of Kilgo came back with various rebuttals. And another individual had wrote an article, and one of the articles says, predator impacts can be minimized by reducing hunter antlerless harvest to increase deer improvement. So if the coyotes are taking fawns and recruitment is down, protect your does so that more fawns are born. So predator management has a variable response in prey recruitment after removal. In part, that is because of habitat quality can change. And as habitat quality changes, you can have higher prey recruitment because there's more food available for them. Predator removal was one thing was said needed to be intense and prolonged to have impact, meaning once you start predator removal, you go to continually keep at it. And it was clear in the articles, peer-reviewed journal articles, coyotes have a physiological response after reduction for reproduction, so it was not behavioral. And once again, you remove coyotes, the breeding females that are left behind have more food available per breeding female, which means higher physical fitness and have a higher birth rate. And that's common amongst all wildlife species. It doesn't matter if we're talking eastern coyote, white-tailed deer, bobcat, fisher, beavers, any of those things. When there's more food available, the per breeding female that's surviving, it increases, their reproduction increases. Now, the aspect of turkey predation, we have some great information from New Hampshire that Andy Timmons worked on during his master's thesis. 45 radio-collared hens, 19 of those were mortalities, and 12 of those hens, that their mortality occurred during reproductive efforts. 3 hens during laying, 6 hens during incubation, and 3 during brood rearing. And the predation was caused by coyotes, red fox, bobcat, great horned owl, and then land use patterns of humans, that being farming aspects and other issues with human use properties. So the question becomes, and I think to answer this really depends on one's perspective of species management in this state. Is there a problem with predation in New Hampshire? Some could argue yes. Is there a problem with hunting in New Hampshire? Some could argue yes. Regardless, the pictures in front of us is a representation of those factors. We continue to have trophy deer. It doesn't matter if it's a large antlered deer in that picture or if it's a smaller deer. All deer are trophies put to the eyes of the person who took that deer. We do have eastern coyotes, which all of us in this room know that. The population, and I'll get to that later, appears to be stable. We have black bears that do use our deer population, and we have our bobcat population that is doing well in the state either. So the question becomes, is there a problem in New Hampshire? And I think that depends on a person's perspective of how they look at this issue. Regarding our deer population, we use our 2-year running average of our buck harvest. I chose to keep one slide on this to keep this presentation as short as possible. And all our slides using this index show a similar trend from roughly 1980 to today. We see a rising trend. Some of our management units are slightly at the goal. Now, between those 2 lines in front of us, if the middle line is the goal. If we're above that, it's considered within goal. And then if we're below, but not below the bottom line, that's within goal. So all of our zones are at near goal, at goal, or slightly above goal, to me indicating that our deer management is working well. Our indices of coyote abundance and population trends in New Hampshire. We have our trapper harvest data that has started since 1995. I want to point out the reason 1995 is used, that is when our trapping report became mandatory. There was a period of voluntary trapping report comparing mandatory trapping data to voluntary data. There's some discrepancies there, and there would be statistical arguments about doing such. We have historical tape data going back to 1928. We don't use tape data because looking at our harvest data during our trapping reports, you can have tape a very low take with a high number of trapping licenses sold. But when you look at the actual effort of going after animals, it's different. So trapping licensed and sold is not an indication of effort, and number of animals taken isn't a consideration for effort either. So that's why we use 1995 to present. We have our bait permit data starting in 2014 that we can look at regarding pursuit of eastern coyote using bait. We have our WCO take going back to 2004. WCOs began right around 2003. And I say right around because I don't remember the exact date, the inception of the month of the WCO rules. And the data is a year before we get it. So if we're assembling data in 2003, the way the reporting is, we don't get that data until 2004. It has to do with the way licenses are sold in the reporting period of June. We have our coyote night hunting permits, which started tracking the coyote use of night hunting permits in 2009. We instituted our turkey hunter survey in 2019. Our bow hunter survey, 2019. And we, as you heard earlier from Andy, the research with UNH on the to quantify fur bearer density, which with density and other parameters, you can go towards population aspects of that statistical model. Our coyote trapper capture per unit effort by region, we split the state north and south because of human density spread and also land use patterns are different. And the amount of data that we assemble to have some statistical significance for fur bearers works better at the breakdown we use here. So nearly all commissioners have seen this before. I point out the spike in the middle for the North Country is not because eastern coyotes presence spiked. It was a year that few people participated, and the individuals that participated in the North were either extremely good persons at trapping, or they were extremely lucky at their capture rate. And I'd like to think that they were extremely good at their craft. The southern portion of New Hampshire, which is the blue line, that's where the majority of people live, and when you have people, you have trapping licenses. So the survey rate, or the amount of data coming in, is higher in the southern part of the state, and we see less variation in that data. Hence, we don't see the peakiness that we have in the north. But in my opinion, going back to 1995 on that slide to present day, that's a fairly consistent capture per effort, indicating not a large swing in the population. And back to what I said earlier, consistent population in New Hampshire. Coyote take versus pelt price. This is fascinating, and the next slide may show this. From 95, is that 95 today? No, it's 98 today. So the pelt prices going forward that we have at our time period does not appear to be driving effort intake. The way those graphs go, you can put lines on to do a number of things. The current prices aren't driving intake. Naturally, if we went upwards, if we tripled those prices, I certainly would be having a different set of words for currently what's out there. Effort and pelt price, which is better than take versus pelt price. You see there is only in a few spots there's a slight correlation as far as effort and pelt price goes. And the interesting about effort and pelt price can draw new trappers in, but new people who trap aren't as efficient as the well-seasoned individuals. And when pelt prices get up to a certain level, is when the well-seasoned individuals will come back out and pursue animals. So again, not a huge correlation. So in my mind, driven by something else within human beliefs that use these resources. Our coyote take by WCO has varied over time, some years higher than others. I don't have any explanation what drives that. Wildlife control operator. So for those in the room that don't know, WCO is wildlife control operator. This is an interesting aspect of data collection that we began in 2009. We can put it over our capture per unit effort of our trapping data. And it's really nice in that both are per 100, and the observations of coyotes by turkey hunters is an observation rate per 100 hours. That's 100 hours of turkey hunting time. And our capture per unit effort is capture per 100 trap nights. And this slide in front of us has the exact same axes on each side, and it's a pretty neat correlation in my mind of how they overlay each other. Towards 23, there's a little bit of deviation there, but pretty neat how they mirror each other on time there. So to me, our turkey hunter observation is a good reference to our trapper capture per unit effort. Our human coyote conflicts in New Hampshire, so green is predation, meaning somebody has called USDA Wildlife Services because they had issues with eastern coyote predation at their front. The majority of that is chickens, however, there can be some of that on cattle farms, and it depends how cattle farms calf their animals, if they're calved out in the fields or not. When they're in the fields, you can have some predation there. And people who have goats or sheep can have predation. Now, we see the predation's gone down over time. However, the department has a very strong bear education fencing program for chickens and other livestock. When you electric fence a system and guard against bears, you are certainly guarding against coyotes. And it is my belief that our bear education system is what's driving the reduction and predation issues with eastern coyotes on other animals. So a consistent complaint that I hear sometimes is the department doesn't educate on predation reduction when people have issues. We do. We educate about fences and other aspects of it. And this slide does show, in my opinion, that we do that. So how does New Hampshire compare to other states? As you see, NCS is no closed season. New Hampshire's no closed season. Maine, no closed season. Vermont, no closed season. Massachusetts, October 14th through March 8th. They have mandatory reporting. And I'll point out, of the states I mentioned, Massachusetts is the only state I'm aware of with mandatory reporting. New York season is October 1st through March 31st. Connecticut has no closed season. I want to clarify on that. Connecticut has a 364-day season. A number of decades ago, Connecticut shortened their season. The number of negative consequences with coyotes increased, and Connecticut then broadened their season to 364 days to reach agreement with all concerned parties to combat the negative issues they have. Nova Scotia has no closed season. I want to point out Nova Scotia had a fatal attack by eastern coyotes around 2009. And the way they dealt with that was did a strong education campaign to get individuals who were feeding coyotes in that area to stop feeding them. They instituted a very broad hunting season and a trapping snaring program to instill fear back in those animals so that they wouldn't have the courage to go up to humans. New Brunswick, October 2nd to February 29th, and Quebec, October 18th to March 31st, and no mandatory reporting there. Another thing I need to point out is the aspect of landscape use within those states varies significantly, so doesn't the human population. Quebec, for instance, does not have eastern coyote habitat throughout Quebec. Wolf territory, whatnot, there's a line there where the two mix, but then as you go north, there aren't eastern coyotes. So the management up there is different based on land patterns and whatnot. And Massachusetts is certainly very different than New Hampshire as far as human density and coyote presence. So with that, there was some game team met in August and had a discussion about these very issues with eastern coyotes and fur bearers in general. So one of the things that came out of that, suggestion by the game team, GMT is the game team, game management team. So mandatory online reporting of all fur bearers taken by hunting. It would allow us to tally the harvest. We get an idea of hunter effort, sex, date taken, location, and method, and also a hound training permit for coyote, given that currently the way the season structure is, it causes some interference on gaining data on the aspects of pursuing coyote. With that, questions, and Andy and Dan and I can be on the hot seat.
Thank you, Pat. Anybody got any questions of Pat on his presentation?
Pat, could you jump back to Connecticut? I don't need to see it, but what was it you said about Connecticut? They reduced their season?
Connecticut, I can't tell you the exact year they did it. I've had this discussion with the now retired Connecticut fur bear biologist. A number of years ago, they reduced their season, they shortened it. And after shortening it, they had an increase in negative, I call them negative consequences, I'll be straight up. The public calls them attacks. So I like to put a spin on it to make it not sound so bad. They had negative consequences with eastern coyote and people, and they put back to a season of 364 days to help manage that issue. Thank you.
Pat, can you go back to that chart where you had the red spikes? I think one more. Go back. You got one there.
Yes.
The last 4 years there, I'm looking at the human coyote predation issue there. It looks like it's going up. It was low in the 19 and 20, but now 21 and 22, it's almost double what it was in 19 and 20. Does that mean there's more interaction with the public? Is that what that's signifying?
Yeah, this is like predicting the weather, right? It's
What's
how
that?
you predict. I say this is similar to predicting the weather. We can measure what's behind us, so there could be some predation issues going up. The other issue that becomes in 2021, we have the COVID issue, and during those years, a number of people went out and had some bought animals and they stayed home. So without having more data, I can't tell you what's driving that slope. And I also can't project what's going to happen going forward. So certainly that data right there in front of us suggests that the predation issue the last 3 or 4 years, compared prior to that, has gone up slightly. And then where it goes forward is hard to predict.
Might be a COVID.
It certainly could be. It certainly could be people buying during COVID. Everyone seemed to go out and buy those cute little furry or feather cats.
Yeah, as Pat pointed out, the majority of that is, is poultry. Most farmers are very familiar with the potential issues and protect their livestock. So it is tough to say. I could certainly see the boom in people getting backyard chickens during COVID could have played into that a little, but of course there's quite a bit of annual variation in those numbers, and this is just a snapshot that USDA gets. This is not an exhaustive list of any potential calls. So it's kind of the best we have of consistent data.
I've got one more question, and it's that damn trappers report. Trap nights, the number of trap nights. You set a durable set. You're hoping a red fox, a gray fox, or a coyote steps into it. How are you going to determine that your trap nights like that?
Yeah, so that's always been an issue and a question from people who trap. And what we tell them with the trapping report is to identify that when they set the trap, they set it for a certain species. Now, you can set a trap the way you described. And depending how technical a person who traps wants to get, they can also set a trap to try to target or attempt to target a red fox or a gray fox over a coyote by adjusting hand tensions and distances from holding them up. So in the trapper's report, we tell people, put the trap down for the species you intended to trap. And then say they set it for a coyote, eastern coyote, and they get a red fox. On the report, there wouldn't be any effort data for that red fox, so that we in-house then know, set the trap for an eastern coyote, and they caught a red fox. And because of that, so we try to keep our data processing consistent, so we know that then we get effort of what species they're going at, And we have effort of capture, clean effort of that species, and try to clean up that issue the best we can.
Could you clean up that report even more by I don't know how, but
Yeah.
by saying, okay, you set trap night on this trout. You're going after coyote, but you caught the red fox. Could you have it somehow so that they would, you're assuming
Yeah.
that they caught that accidentally, let's say, but it's not.
For me to answer
Poor
that
choice of
question off the cuff, so it would be, it's certainly something I would sit down and talk with Dan and our data persons to come up with ways to do it and include somebody from that traps, probably someone from NHTA, to clean that up if we do it. We'd have to work out some complexities and space issues and other things. So I can't give you a straightforward answer right now of the abilities to do that. Best I can say is I understand what you're saying. Others have asked about that. There may not be ways for us to clean it up.
I can't see why a trapper would lie what they were setting the trap for, because he'll take any of the three, probably the red
Right.
fox more than anything they're going to pay for it.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, what are examples of other human coyote conflicts you're tracking?
So those are USDA numbers, and if a person has, oftentimes it's wildlife, a coyote ran through my yard and I'm concerned, and I need information about it. So that's often what the issue is. It's either predation or an animal going through the yard. Dan worked in that office for a year or so. He may explain that better than me.
Everything other than predation kind of spans the gamut. It could be like Pat said, fear for personal safety. It could be, there's occasionally our interactions with pets, so those can be on there too. That's not overly common, so that wouldn't be a big portion of it. So you imagine just about anything you can imagine that somebody could call for would end up in this report. So it's, unfortunately, it's difficult to break it down into the specific categories, but, again, if you're looking at the numbers, so you're looking at about maybe 40 or 50 calls over the course of the year that aren't predation related, and a lot of those probably are, coyote ran through my yard in the middle of the day, I'm concerned it has rabies. But without taking a deeper dive into the data, I can't say specifically or if there's any trends in specific types, but there's, that group there is anything other than predation somebody might call about a coyote.
So your question made me think of something about some of the other issues. And I want to point out that from 2012 to 2019, New Hampshire has had 7 negative coyote encounters. That's contact between humans and coyotes, whether that was caused by a dog presence. During the spring months, our eastern coyotes can get very defensive in territories, and they will actually escort people out of trails while they're walking their dogs. We trail Massachusetts. Massachusetts had since 2012 to 2019 has 11 negative coyote encounters, and Vermont 0 and Maine 0. So I point those out so we know how we compare to the states when they say the spot.
Commissioner Hunt?
Question about some of the research you presented and shared previously relative to New Hampshire. You talked about Pennsylvania, the differentiation between grassland and forest land, and then there was some, other study highlights from other states where maybe it was like a different result. If you take that and look at New Hampshire, would you paint New Hampshire with one brush? Is New Hampshire diverse enough that you would have to look at coyote management in very different ways?
So the studies you're talking about is, there was a study in Pennsylvania where they did deer mortality or coyote
I think it was
predation.
Minnesota.
And then there was a study from Minnesota, and there's a study, the Delaware study. So Delaware is considered, and I have to highlight considered, to be predator-free, or coyote-free, I shouldn't say predator-free, coyote-free. However, in the study area, in one of the sites where they're monitoring for white-tailed deer, they picked up a picture of an eastern coyote. So certainly with that, I can't stand before you and say they're predator-free, I can say they're predator-low. The mortality rate of white-tailed fawns there was 38.5%. And not too far away in Pennsylvania, they did a study in an agricultural landscape and a forested landscape. The forested landscape had a fawn loss greater than the agricultural landscape, and it was tied to deer overbrowsing of the forest. So there wasn't enough areas to stash fawns, and eastern coyotes could get in after them better. The total, so aggregate those two different habitats together, the total mortality of fawns in Pennsylvania was roughly 43%. In Delaware, it was roughly 38%. So there's a slight difference there. Some people lump them together and say, look, there's no difference. There's a slight difference. However, the Pennsylvania study found nothing in their research to say that eastern coyotes was causing a decline in population growth of their deer. So now, moving up to New Hampshire, we're more north, we have greater snow depth, we have higher elevation, we're a different landscape. And our forest types vary from south to north. Our human density and land use varies between the region. Onset of winter in the north is earlier than it is in the south. The use of deer yards in the north is greater than it is in the southern part of the state, and the depth of snow is greater. So all the factors that influence deer predation vary significantly from northern New Hampshire to down in southern New Hampshire. There will be years where white-tailed deer are deer yarding in the North Country, and down in the southeast corner of the state, there's not an inch of snow, and they're freely running around. So New Hampshire cannot be painted with a one-color brush on coyote management from a deer population standard, nor human use of the land pattern. So we have very different parameters that we're dealing with in the state.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I mean, that's kind of the takeaway with the studies on coyote predation and deer survival, is there's a number of different factors that can impact how those play off one another. Like Pat had pointed them all out in the presentation, but in Pennsylvania, for example, they did two different studies fairly close to one another, and both of them found similar results, that coyotes, bears, and bobcats all took roughly equal amounts of fawns. They did not find that it was impacting recruitment because, again, it's Pennsylvania, much different habitat, climate. Their deer densities are substantially higher than ours. Like Pat had pointed out, those areas that have really high deer densities, all the understory in the forest is overbrowsed, there's no good fawning cover. That made fawns easier to find for coyotes, so predation was easier. There's also a lot more out there for them to find to make it easier for them to find. New Hampshire's a completely different state. Our forests are substantially thicker, our deer densities are much lower. So all those things, have potential to impact, what you're gonna find for survival rates of fawns. I agree with Pat 100%. The southern part of the state is completely different than the northern part of the state in terms of winter severity, whether or not deer are in deer yards. Another thing to consider in New Hampshire is that, not just New Hampshire, but in across the country, is that our winters are milder and milder. We do not record winter severities like we did in the back in the 70s and the 80s even. So deer survival in New Hampshire has really benefited from that. Certainly, during severe winters, is there potential for coyotes to have impacts in local areas and deer yards? I think that's probably accurate. We haven't ever measured that, but there's potential for those finer scale impacts. But our index data on our populations would not suggest that coyotes are having an impact that's causing declines anywhere, because as Pat had pointed out, virtually all of our deer management units are at, above, or near the objective. None of them are on the, at least long-term, there's no long-term declines in any of our management units for deer. But again, that's not to count out that there couldn't be, severe winters, there's short-term impacts, things like that. But yeah, there's so much that plays into it, and all these different areas where this research has occurred have different factors that make the results different.
If I could add one piece, maybe back on Dan's words. In the research, one piece out of Canada, found that when deer densities get extremely low, 1 or 2 deer per square mile, eastern coyotes can then keep that population from growing. They can keep it down. So,
Andy, did you wish to say something? You raised your hand.
Thank you, but they're
Dan covered
grabbed
it.
my point.
Okay.
Thank you for that, and I think I was a big proponent of this presentation, so thank you. I think you hit on a lot of the things collectively that I was looking for, and what I got out of it. You know, there's no one magic answer, right? I mean, you kind of gave us information from Canada all the way down to Georgia, and I think information from Florida, and there's no easy way to kind of take all that and say this is what the right answer is in New Hampshire, but I think the chairman would not disagree with me when I say I come from a different place than he
Quite different.
than he comes from, and I think the diversity across the state has to be kind of recognized and considered and all of that. The last thing I would add is I was really excited to see your slide of recommended next steps. So I would just leave us saying I would look forward to seeing how those might come to fruition in the future. But thank you for hitting on all that I asked for.
If you satisfied her, you've done one hell of a job. Anyone else have any questions of Andy, Pat, or Dan? Seeing none, thank you very much, gentlemen.
I had just one simple question. In respect to the slides, and it's a little hard for me to see, but how many coyotes a year are taken via trapping?
it varies between 250 to 400
Okay.
in the state. And the reason I say it varies, it doesn't vary that broad between year to year. It ebbs and flows a little bit. It depends on effort and trapping conditions, which all those conditions that affect deer predation also affect trapping and how people go about it. So.
Thank you. Anybody got any further questions?
I do. I'll ask the really tough question, and collectively, listening to this and having read a bunch of material that was provided on a bunch of other studies, it doesn't appear that those who are deer hunters need to really be concerned at this point, let's say south of the Notches, with respect to coyote predation on the deer population, not really affecting the deer population. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah.
So here's my question, and this was asked 2 meetings ago with regard to coyotes, okay? Considering the number of coyotes that get taken, whether it be by trapping, hunting, hounding, and the incident of coyote reports that we get, shared by Facebook or shared by phone calls or comments from turkey surveys, is it a fair question to ask, do you think that the coyote is a species of concern?
When you say species of concern, are you
Do
saying?
you think it's threatened in any way? Do you think it's threatened in any way?
Absolutely not. So eastern coyote is a highly adaptive species that can adapt to all types of habitat types and also adapt to all types of stresses on those landscapes and avoid. And based on our index with our trapper index, and then we'll have some of our data from the camera study to support that. There's no indications of a declining coyote population or a concern about a crashing the population.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the gentleman? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, we move on to committee structure report. Legislative committee, Commissioner Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had an interim meeting on September 29th in which we recreational tuna tournament license for non-residents. After much discussion, our committee voted that we did not believe that was necessary at this time, so we will not be bringing that forward to a vote at the full commission meeting. Today, we met prior to this meeting. We have 3 action items presented to us by staff regarding rules. Make a motion that we accept FIS Rules 1100 parts and sections regarding licenses and permits. This was largely housekeeping, and it passed 5-0. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
You moved and seconded to accept 1101, correct?
1100. FIS 1100.
1106. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stands approved.
Thank you.
Whoop,
I think you were current, Chair, that is 1101.
what's that?
1100.
1101 multi-license form.
I have FIS 1100 parts.
You have just for the whole chapter. This is,
Oh, okay, I'm referring to the one Marty gave us.
oh, okay. Well, it's actually 1101, 1101, 0.01.
Okay. I can add the,
The second okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the new motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Stands approved.
Yeah, I'm seeing, if I may just see, you're reading the one we got today, October 17th?
That's just a general one.
Okay,
I'm reading the.
This is
Do
explicit.
you want to see it, Susan?
okay.
there were several handouts. So we have the actual rule handout, and I was just going off of Marty's.
Some of it, some of it. Are you good with this, Susan?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to have that meeting again. So item 2, FIS 1201, 02, I'm sorry, student qualifications. This involved the Hunter Ed program relative to minors. We did have one change. I might rely upon the Rockingham Commissioner. We have the language that changed with the firearms regarding in the training, and that's going to be changed to allow continued use of BB guns and air rifles, but only for current courses. Going forward, those will not be free courses. So I make a motion that we accept that with the modification as dictated by the Rockingham Commissioner.
I would say not dictated. Because an amendment as voted on by the commission.
Marty has the language.
Yeah, and it was amended by committee.
Yeah, so I make a motion that we accept that modified language. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Could you explain to the rest of the commission what that language is?
Well, there was, as you
Do you want me to help you?
Yes, there was much discussion. That
Okay.
was most of our meeting.
So FIS 1201 was presented with some changes. Also, there was language to amend to section 3, a live firing experience using .22 caliber rimfire rifles, removing laser rifles, adding BB guns or pellet rifle. So after much discussion, an amended version of that was approved by committee to be updated to say a live firing experience using .22 caliber rimfire rifles or larger, excluding laser, excluding BB, excluding pellets, however, creating a provision that any currently approved programs using BB or pellet rifles may continue to move forward.
Yes, and that's what my notes reflect.
Thank you. Was there a motion?
Yes, to accept the, with the modification.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve and support this amended version of 120102. Is that
1201.
1201 is-
1201.02.
any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
The last one regards hunter and bow hunter education instructors under FIS 120203 regarding termination of an instructor. We would do away with the hearing requirement at the administrative level within the department if an instructor was dismissed. I make a motion that we accept it as written by staff. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
You heard the motion and the second. Any further discussion?
May I add something? I just add the details of those, all those FIS were rated out at last commission meeting. There are other amendments in there regarding background check and other things, but that's the main ones.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
Is approved, minus except one.
That we voted for one, yes.
Is that all, Commissioner?
Yes.
Governance Committee, Commissioner Caven.
Yes, the only thing I have to report is I had a 2-hour work session with Fish and Game rep on the Governance Committee, Sheriff Madison, and pulled together a bunch of notes that had been taken from previous Governance Committee meetings. And the Governance Committee has not met in a long time. So we will be meeting soon, and everybody will be provided what's been codified, for lack of a better term, and it will allow us to move through a bunch of information that we've already covered in a bunch of different ways. So we're preparing for a very good upcoming Governance Committee meeting.
Thank you. Sustainability and Strategic Planning, Commissioner Hodgson got called away today. He's the chair of that. He's a very important meeting in Maine. He had no report, so we'll move on to Resources and Infrastructure. Commissioner Green.
Resource and Infrastructure has not met. However, I'm happy to announce we finally got the hatchery reports. So we will be meeting in November. And for the committee, one of the things that I have on our agenda is to ask you, but it's also here for the commissioners, and I would like by next month, if any commissioner wants that committee to look at anything other than just the hatcheries, please send an email or something with a request for us to bring it up. So we'll be meeting in November.
Commissioner Green, last meeting, it was discussed that possibly the staff would be meeting with your committee to bring you up to speed on anything that they might be having in the works.
For land acquisition.
I believe there
For
was
land
a
acquisition.
request.
Land acquisition.
Yeah, I believe there was something mentioned about upcoming projects, which I wanted to give them time to get it together. That we do have a staff member assigned to it. I guess I could ask now if we could have a staff member have that update by then, Scott?
Sure.
Is that possible?
Yeah, for the November meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That would be specifically for land or for other projects?
The upcoming project mainly headed towards land is what they were looking for.
Thank you. Public engagement and education, Commissioner Price.
I did follow up with Ms. Beck from Wilton with Commissioner Green's recommendation. I sent you and Commissioner Green an email, my conversation. She is willing to distribute in a newsletter that is through the state conservation commission groups. This would be an outline of what the commission does, what our statutory authority is, and also potential bios of each of us. I suggested, as I documented in the email, that we just provide her with the same information that the governor used in our nominations. That's public information, it's available. But the upside to this would be that every local conservation commission in every town gets this newsletter. So it would be an excellent educational opportunity down to the local level to inform people about what the commission does. So I think it's worthwhile that we should just move forward with that, collect those, and she assured me that we would have pre-approval of any article prior to release. So our committee would undertake that, doing a review of that.
I'm just wondering how and where that would be stored. Our bio is up to the governor's office.
Well, we all sent them.
Excuse me?
We all sent them.
We all
So
sent them.
we
Now, whether
should each have
whether
them. I mean, I could contact the governor's office, but I think if we all just went back on our laptops and sent them in, I can collect them.
Yeah, I mean, every group that wants that, I mean, we gotta send our bios to everybody.
Well, it is public information because we do, you
Right.
know.
But is this question on whether we actually belong here? I mean, is this, what's the crux of this?
Well, I think from her my conversation with her, as well as Commissioner Green, is a lot of people, our commission name comes up at these meetings, and no one seems to know what our role is and what our statutory authority. She was not aware of our primary statutory authority under RSA 206. She was unaware we were involved in legislation so heavily. It was an enlightening conversation, she said, to understand exactly what the commission does. So,
When this had come up previously, we did have a bit of discussion that I think it's a good request, but looking at it more from a commission kind of controlled information document, so that today it's the Conservation Commission saying, hey, you have this here. Like I would recommend that we don't create something that is specific for that, or give information where they create it. So I wouldn't be opposed to giving input to a standardized template that may even go on the website that further explains, because right now the website just has our picture and an RSA of 11 commissioners, this or that. So I think it would be beneficial to kind of kick that up a notch, but I would recommend that it be something that is put together and wholly owned and controlled by the
I agree with the
commission.
website, but I've seen some of these bios, and it's gonna be one long website.
Well, that's why I think we have to create a template, right? Like
Okay.
4 bullet points or something like that. I mean, some people can write a 5-6 page CV, and I don't think that that's the place either. So that would be my recommendation.
Commissioner?
Just to be clear that I did understand this, even from the previous conversation we had. The individual that made this request is a part of a conservation commission here in Temple or Wilton.
But she's
Okay.
also involved at the state level with the Department of Ag.
Well, my thoughts are that with respect to her request, I would rather see the request come from the Association of Conservation Commissions. Okay, their office makes the request. Okay, and then someone, I'm not volunteering, can write, okay, in response to that and include whatever information that we all agree upon should be shared. Yeah, because yes, the governor's office does have a bio on each and every one of us. And, you know, in discussions, you know, in the past, it was, you know, why would anyone else need a list of the bios when in fact they've all been reviewed and are held at the governor's office. Okay, so for me, this request should maybe be coming from a bit of a higher level, and I think that in an effort to control this, this gets written by someone on this commission, if we choose to provide it, and it goes from the commission to the association, the Conservation Commission, the Association of Conservation Commissions, there.
Well, I'm hearing two competing opinions, one regarding putting this on our own website versus this outreach. Are you saying we should do both? Or one?
Someone wants to know about me, I believe my email is posted and my phone number is posted, I'm happy to talk, and people have called. So that's how I personally feel about it. And, I know that with these sorts of things, sometimes, quite frankly, without, it becoming a spoken thing, people end up being weighed, based on how many diplomas paper the office wall. And I don't think we need to do that, okay? The credentials that put people on the commission were accepted by the Gold Dome across town and others, okay, including the executive council. That's why we sit here. So I don't know why this individual is looking for this, but I'm suspect. I'll be that frank.
Commissioner Hug.
I hear Commissioner Cavaney, and I think the answer is a balanced approach. I think we can create something that is in the end positive. The ask at the August meeting was for the Public Education Committee to kind of take that and work on that.
Yep.
I would just highlight that it did come in August, so if we don't have a decision and move forward, they're kind of taking more time to kind of
What's
close
the
on that.
commission feel about Commissioner Hodgman's recommendation of a template? And you, each commissioner, put in, if you look at the RSA, I haven't got the book here, but it'll say the different qualifications. I don't know, some college education, something like that. That's where you type in whatever college education you got. And I think you ought to do it yourself. I don't think somebody else ought to do your bio, but it ought to be on some template.
4 bullet points or something short and sweet and a
But they all should
summary
be the
about the
same.
role. They should all be the same. A summary of roles and responsibilities, key, legislative authorities. I think if you go to the commission landing page on our website, it's bare bones. It's got our pictures, but it doesn't give an elaboration. I get law enforcement calls, I get this, I get that. I'm like, no, that's, you gotta go here, you gotta go here. I think it would be helpful. And I think this turns into, like, let's just do it once, but then it has a greater purpose.
Commissioner Green.
May I speak? Seeing this came in through me. Everybody seems to say it's just that this lady is just looking for a bios. That is not the intent of the whole thing. The intent of the whole thing was a confusion with the public on what is the role of the commission. We've heard it for years, at least I have for close to 6 years now that I've been on the commission. Commission has a, we've heard commission has total control of Fish and Game. I don't know how many times I've heard, for some reason, we're the 8th division of Fish and Game. Okay? The public was confused. The Conservation Commissions were confused of what is the role of the commission. How many times do we each year come into a commission bill because nobody really understands what the commission was. That was the intent of this woman, was the intent to clarify what is the role of the Fish and Game Commission in New Hampshire. It wasn't what's your bio or my bio. It was to explain what the commission was. Some of you know, 4 years ago, I requested our own department to do that, but that never transpired either. Is to clean up the confusion. Do we want to clean up the confusion or not? That's what I say this vote would be. I'm not going to sit here and say we need to post our bios on Fish and Game's website. I don't agree with that. And it's not that I don't agree with my bio. That website right now is extremely hard to look at and even figure out. The public's having a hard time with it. This was an opportunity that a woman involved with the Conservation Commission, whatever association throughout the state, to put an article out there on the commission with all the commissions in the state. That's what it was about. It wasn't about, I want to find out Megan's bio, or I want to find out Susan's bio. It was not the intent. Let the commission decide.
Do you have a motion?
If I may, it sounds like this needs to go back to committee. We haven't had a full committee meeting for public affairs, so why don't we have another committee meeting? Is there a deadline?
I'm going to make a motion. This has been kicked down the road for 3 months. This woman's been waiting for an answer.
What's your motion?
My motion is to have, I don't even know who's running that committee anymore. To have that committee to get with the woman, work on an article, and present an article to the commission. Then the commission can decide if they agree with the article or not.
Is there a
I'll
second?
keep it simple.
Is there a second to the motion? Not gonna second, it died.
No problem. Right?
Right, right.
Let's move on then.
No, I think I would like to make a different motion.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that the Education Committee create a document that is a one-page summary of the overview roles and responsibilities of the commission.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it, but with discussion, doesn't the department have something already that they could just put on the website? Or you're talking about like a more of an informative, like half-page?
I'm talking about pushing answering that woman's request by what I'm hearing is outlining those responsibilities, but having it be something that we share. Here you go, this is our, and I think it provides the commission multiple uses.
Okay. Yeah, I second that.
Commissioner Cable.
So just to be clear, and to rephrase what you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
said, you're looking for a page, okay, that basically outlines the aggregated commission's job and what we do.
Yeah, yeah. And not the RSA, right? Like not regurgitating, but roaming his language with it of what our roles, responsibilities, and what we do.
And you're making that where it's just put on Fishing Game's website?
No, that if we're aligned on it, then it can get emailed to whoever asked for it. We can send that to that woman, and she can use that in her article. But I think it provides value in a bigger space, right? And then it's we're aligned on what we're pushing towards her versus she creates something, then we're like, oh no, we don't like that language, oh let's, I just, to your point, I want to try to get that closed efficiently and not create this back and forth.
So would the committee bring back to you
The committee at the next,
a one-page sheet and you'll...
and everybody's like, yep, that looks great, and then if we're aligned, then we can also vote, hey, do we want to ask to have this on the website, or else do we want to put that?
Any further discussion on the motion?
I kind of would look to Commissioner Green for his feedback on that, because I'm trying to help provide.
I'm trying to try to figure out everything you said and put it in one nutshell.
I'm ready for a vote.
I'm still having a discussion.
Yes, we are.
I'm trying to help provide closure to that request.
My thing is that I just think this commission needs to come up and start answering the public on what our role is, instead of the public being confused. I know how many times when we all started as the commissioners that we were confused on what our role was. What do you think the public is? We need to educate the public on what the commission is. I think it's simple, but obviously, I mean, I like to keep it simple.
Okay. Any further discussion? Everybody heard the motion? Tanya, can you read the
Yes.
motion back?
Megan moved that the Public Engagement Committee create a one-page summary of the roles and responsibilities of the commission and bring it back to the full commission next month for approval and decide where it goes from there.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Price, do you have anything more
No, I don't believe so.
on that committee?
Yeah.
You got some action orders now? Okay, Seacoast report, Commissioner Catone.
Right. On the 29th of September, Janet Coit, she's second in charge for National Marine Fisheries Service, met with representatives from the commercial fishing industry in the Region 3 office in Durham to hear concerns from the fishing industry. The main concern was with NOAA's lack of credible data in assessing stock assessments. They have not done a full trawl survey in the Gulf of Maine for over 4 years. And with this flawed data, they're making what the quotas are, the current quotas for fishing, for the commercial fishermen. The fishermen believe that because they're out there every day covering more ocean than what the government is, that the data that we're collecting should be utilized in stock assessments. But it's, NOAA has yet to approve any of what data we're providing. The other thing we aired out about was offshore wind and the potential conflicts with the fishing, lack of fishing grounds going to be taken over by wind farms, habitat destruction, and the lack of scientific data involved with electromagnetic fields from the cables coming ashore on benthic fish populations. And then the overburdened whale regulations on the lobster industry. The lobster industry feels that they're doing all the heavy lifting in the protection of the right whales, where the shipping industry and the offshore wind developers are getting off with a free pass. And so we aired out all those concerns to Ms. Coit, and hopefully we can get some kind of feedback as to what the concerns were. So that was basically it.
Thank you. Okay, Lakes Management Advisory Committee, Commissioner Price.
We did not meet, however, there was a broadcast email that we are going to try to meet within the next 60 days, just selecting a date, so we should have possibly a report in December.
Thank you. Rivers Management Advisory Committee, Commissioner Hodgson is again unable to be here. Old business, does anybody have any old business?
Fine.
Commissioner Gill.
And if I'm in the wrong place, you just tell me that, and I'll wait my turn.
You're in
Okay,
the
but,
wrong place.
what you said?
I said you're in the wrong place.
He'll lean on me or something. But with regards to some old business that I mentioned a couple of times to the full commission, to the public, is, in my county, small Swansea Lake, 106-acre body of water, managed as a trout fishery, smelt population, popular with anglers. You go and the proof is in the pictures that it produces some really great fish. There has been a conflict of use with a slalom course, a water skiing slalom course on a 106-acre body of water. I've had phone calls from people. I've been to the lake several times, not to fish, but to observe. I don't longer own a boat. My friends have boats, so that's good in town. But that body of water gets tremendous activity. Now, the slalom course is permitted by Marine Patrol. And in talking with folks that use the lake, And I know that it's very difficult sometimes to get agencies to have a discussion, but I believe in what homework I've tried to do, which negotiating state websites is not always an easy thing to do, but the permitting for slalom courses, of which I just recently learned there may only be 2 permitted in the state. One of them would be in Commissioner DeRosa's backyard on Merry Meeting Lake, as well as the Small Swansea Lake, that it's a rulemaking process. And the rulemaking process is due to expire. And I just thought I would toss this out to the commission one more time for any comment or be tabled and discussed at another time. But going forward, with respect to the intense interest for people to be using public bodies of water for all kinds of recreation, that we not somehow find a way to have joint discussion, especially on designated trout waters, okay, with respect to permitting of this sort of activity. Now, I know that, again, there is also the Public Access Advisory Board, okay? PWAB is what they call it, right? Public Water Advisory Access Board. And I don't know what they discuss. I've not read their minutes or that sort of thing. But if you, and this is how I'm thinking, I'll stand fully corrected, but if you take a 106-acre body of water, you get permitted to put an 850-foot long slalom course, okay? And on the permit, it says who will be using this, and the permit says 2 to 3 people, okay? That takes up a pretty large section of a very small lake, okay? And even though the permit gives early morning hours, evening hours, days of the week, if you're a fisherman, you like to fish early in the morning, in the evening. Water skiers like the water like glass, early in the morning, early in the evening. So my question, if I was limited to one question for Paul, if this slalom course on this small body of water, a designated trout water, okay, with a, again, I keep repeating the smelt issue, which is an indicator in and of itself, because it controls a portion of that small lake, is that a taking? Is that a taking? And I can tell you that having observed with my best set of binoculars the boating activity that can occur on that small lake, anglers who do buy a license and expect to be able to enjoy the lake are cut out of a portion of the lake. You sure as heck cannot troll through there. You cannot cast artificial lures in that location, or you will be dragging up submerged buoys that I have not measured, but I understand they're only submerged about 4 feet. And then they're inflated and they come to the surface. So, knowing the pressures that we will continue to see going forward on our public bodies of water, with respect to Marine Patrol, okay, granting these permits, especially on smaller bodies of water, especially on trout waters, and I have a special feeling about trout waters, okay, is that obvious, that we not find a way to sit down and see if there is any conflict here before these permits are granted. I'm sorry for being so long-winded, but I didn't know how else to explain it. And maybe it's something that needs to be taken up at a different time, but I keep hearing about it. I've observed it. I was back there again this summer, late summer. So I'm putting it out there. And maybe, again, maybe someone could write a short letter to PWA and ask them, is there any consideration for this? But, you know, I certainly would not do that, not representing the commission or anything like that. But, so I guess it's a question. Do we think it's worthy of a discussion at some point in time, or do we just move on?
I would think that it should come from the department, not necessarily the commission. I mean, I don't know if Diane, maybe in fisheries or the director, what that's his bailiwick.
I mean, I can give you the chair of the Public Water Access Board's email, you could send him, I would recommend you send him what you just told this board. I used to take the minutes with the Public Water Board, this is the type of thing they discuss, Marine Patrol sits on the board. I think you could go to the meeting if the commission would want you to go to the quad meeting. I mean, it may be beneficial to you, Director, what do you think? I think it's something Garrett.
I think it should come from the Director of Fish and Game, sent to it, sent to that board, with John backing it up.
A backup document of what you're,
When's the meeting?
they meet here.
At Fish and Game?
Yeah, every
Oh,
other.
even better. Have John at the meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
I would disagree with John on a lot of his comments, so I would prefer that the commission decide what they want to do, set a policy on it, and I think this should actually come more from the commission than the department. No disrespect, John, bass waters are just as important to the department as trout waters. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's some issues there. I would think that this, to me, is a, you know, you have different user groups trying to decide how to use public waters, is what this comes down to. And I'm not sure that, no, let me think about it a little bit, but to me, I think it would actually come better from the commission stating that we see this as a policy issue.
I guess I gotta, with all due respect, disagree with you, but Diane, did you have something to say?
Yeah, if I could add, I mean, we did talk about this before, and I did look into some of the issues. I did talk with Marine Patrol, and some of these issues are not our jurisdiction. We have no say over that type of stuff, and I think it's really important to make that point. So definitely the user group, you know, we can provide input for sure, and I agree with the director that there's a lot of validity in recreational opportunities at a variety of places, but obviously some of these things are out of our hands, unfortunately. So I don't want to say shut the book, but I will definitely just want to make sure folks understand that there are certain things that we oversee and there's certain things that we don't. So some of that is permitted by DES. I mean, sorry, Marine Patrol.
I know you're saying, you know, jurisdiction of Fish and Game. I think what we also have to watch for too is the authority of the commission. Do we have authority over that?
Chairman, our learned counsel has just pointed out that yes, the answer to that question is yes.
We do have authority.
It's under item 3 of 206 4A, our duties, acquisition, development, maintenance of public access to lands and waters for recreational use consistent with New Hampshire law. So it is our authority.
Under that statute, then I'll make a motion. This should be creative. And I'm sure the vice chair will flower it up. Beautify it. I make a motion that the commission sends a letter to that board based on that article, on that RSA, and that the letter is signed by our chairman.
Asking the board to look into it.
Yes.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Okay, you didn't second it.
So you want a letter drafted and sent to this board,
From the commission sent to the board,
saying what?
saying that we're against that. They're having the slalom course, which is affecting access for boating and fishing on that lake.
Under our RSA,
Under RSA,
206.
both the RSA. In other words, let's not kick it down the road anymore. If we have the authority, let's do it. This has been an issue all summer for John.
Okay. Tanya just had a good idea. Have Commissioner Cavaney draft a letter.
Don't shoot the messenger.
You just saw how long he talked.
Well, he knows, he's the passionate one about this concern.
Well, yes, first-hand knowledge.
I'm getting the phone calls.
First-hand knowledge,
Okay.
right? First-hand knowledge, we'll call it.
All right, then let's have it where Commissioner Cavaney writes up his synopsis.
Right.
Sends it to you.
Yep.
You give it to vice chair, because we know that's what happens.
Tweak it.
And you clean it up.
Yep.
Leave it up to you and the vice chair on how it's worded on behalf of the full commission. How's that?
Yep.
And see where it goes from there.
Any further discussion on the motion? I should have known.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hardy.
So I think I understand the challenge, and I've seen those slalom courses before, not at that lake, and I'm just trying to picture the slalom course in this 100-acre pond. Yes, Marine Patrol permits putting that in, but I would like some feedback from Diane, if possible, on, from a habitat interference, you know, we spent some time talking about seasonal, we spent a lot of time talking about seasonal docks, right? Like, is there a fisheries problem, aside from like the access and kind of the finding the balance between user groups? Is there anything from a habitat side that would concern you about such a course in a 100-acre pond?
Well, I mean, there's definitely information on the variety. You know, small water body is a small water body, whether it's a slalom course, a speedboat going by, jet skis. You know, there can definitely be issues with wave action and impacts to bank stability. But again, I mean, yes is the answer potentially, but without doing, you know, a study or whatever. But again, not my jurisdiction, so I can say absolutely sure there's impacts to big boats going by in big lakes, you know, it doesn't really matter, so. It's, yeah, I mean, the big thing here is that, yeah, I think coming from the commission makes sense, because it's not really what, we don't really have a say, but.
John's already answered your question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out, my next
No,
request.
so the answer is no, there's not an impact to the fisheries.
Yeah, the fishery itself is usually not, it's
So
the bank
the issue
stability.
is access
Yes.
and fishability.
And reconciling multiple uses.
Correct.
Yes.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cavaney.
Yes, and and I understand everything that everybody has said, but I think if I was limited to focus and repeat one thing in particular, you take an 850-foot long slalom course and you place it in a location where people want to fish and they can't fish there. Is that a taking? In other words, okay, it's even, you know, if Diane said it wouldn't affect the smelt population or the trout population or anything else. When that activity is going on outside of the fishermen, the person that's out there with a kayak or a canoe, all right, or a small 12-foot boat and a 4-horse motor, okay, is impacted by that taking, okay? And I guess ultimately all I was looking for is there any way to have a discussion about it from two entities?
Hopefully
That's all.
this letter will create that.
Can you boil it down for me to try to put it in perspective? This 850-foot slalom course, does it make it so that 50% of the shoreline of this small pond is not fishable? Can you kind of put it in context?
It is not 50%, Commissioner. It's it's in a location where there happens to be, for lack of a better term, suitable habitat, where trout hang out, makes it very, very difficult for someone to fish that section, or put the fishing aside to paddle a kayak, okay? And you can paddle a kayak over something that's submerged 6 inches, never mind 4 feet. However, to actively fish that section of this small lake, it makes it very difficult or impossible.
And the permit tells them where specifically in the lake that can
It
be
is
used?
mapped and times and days of the week for a very long period of time. Basically ice out till right now.
But before we vote, can you help me understand exactly what the letter is for? It's to open up a dialogue, or it's to tell them, we don't want this here?
I would not say that, because what I'm hoping for is that there could be a dialogue essentially between two agencies. Okay, New Hampshire Fish and Game, okay, looking out for the opportunities for people to be on public waters, as well as the Public Water Advisory Board, all right, and having a discussion with Marine Patrol. Marine Patrol, they're not doing anything wrong. They applied for the permit. Nobody said anything other than people calling me, and they get the permit.
Are there
And
any restrictions to that permit?
oh, the
For
restrictions.
example, if there's complaints being made, they could lose it?
Yeah, because I did find out, and finding out information isn't as easy as you might think. They actually applied for extended hours, and they were denied by Marine Patrol. Okay, so there's perhaps an awareness here that this is a little bit of an issue, but I guess if these agencies would talk to each other and have a serious discussion, and they came to me and said, sorry, everybody's good with this, think of something else, I'd go away from it, okay? But I just feel like this involves a couple of agencies, and they should be having the discussion.
I would support a vote for a letter to open a dialogue. I just wanted to make sure I understood what the
Okay.
intent and content of that letter.
Commissioner DeBoer, did I hear your motion to move the question?
Yes.
Okay. Question has been moved. No more discussion. We're up for a vote now. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved. Thank you. Any other old business?
I'm gonna give one.
You never used that one before.
But
Moving the question.
I've taken, moved the question and deny it. I've never agreed with it.
No other old business? New business? Anybody got any new
There was a
business?
second on move the question.
Excuse me?
Did you get a second on move
You
the
don't need a
question?
second.
Don't need a
Don't need
second.
a second.
No.
Well,
All you need to say is there's still discussion going on.
Yeah, there will be, yeah.
I'll talk after.
And the new business, I have something that's paramount. We are having a commissioner sitting at this table. Tomorrow, his resignation is enforced. Commissioner Mark LaChance is resigning from the commission, and he is not really happy for that, because he's been a very active member of this commission, a very trustworthy member of the commission, a very sincere member of this commission. He just hasn't got time to continue to be with us. And Mark, you've been very active on the commission. You represented your county very well. They should be very proud of how you represented them. And I personally want to thank you. Like hobble over here. Thanks, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, Commissioner DeBoe, did you have something?
I have a new item. We've had a long year as a commission, with the biennial hearings, the legislative hearings, the meetings. We've all had 12-month steady of meeting, and I would like to entertain a motion to skip the November meeting. We all have outdoor exploit.
What are those?
Some of us like to go afield, and I think we could all use we don't have anything pressing for November, if we could put it into December. I'd like to make a motion, we skip our November meeting.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner Green?
I'm against that. Reasoning being, number one, this commission has to do business. Business doesn't shut down for a month in November, number one. We went through this a couple of years ago. Number two, November can be very busy for us. We're going to be starting into legislation session. There's going to be a lot of time doing that. We accept donations every month from the public. I don't think it's fair that we tell the public, hey, we're going to be closed for the month of November because somebody wants to go under. So I'm going to be against it.
If I may,
Commissioner DeVoe?
I've been on the
Or
legislative,
field, whatever.
I've been on the legislative committee for 3 years, and it's very frustrating. The early days of getting language that we have partial listings, titles only. It's not till December, January that we start getting a firm understanding of what the LSRs are for, what they mean, who's behind them. And we do a lot of crossing out what we did last month in the month of December. So unless there's anything really pressing from the department, I think anybody making donations would be happy to wait 30 days for their check to clear.
Any further discussion?
I will add that it's not going to affect our legislative session. JELCAR is so overwhelmed, they've asked our department not to submit any rules for consideration in November. We will not have bill language by the November meeting, so it won't affect my committee's work. If that has any input into people's decision.
Commissioner Cave?
Just a random question with respect to the date of our meeting, which I believe is the week of Thanksgiving.
Yes, it is. It's
It is.
Tuesday.
And I know that that week is very busy for families. Would people be amenable, and maybe it would help with any personal conflicts if we asked to have the meeting a week earlier?
I'd have to check this room.
I know, I understand. I'm just wondering if it's the week, that's, could be a real conflict, an issue for folks, or, maybe another date in the month, and then, everybody gets what they really should get. Just ask.
I personally am opposed to not meeting in November. We're coming up to the very last line in the agenda. It's call the public. The public have a chance to come and speak in front of this commission. And I personally think to not give them a chance to speak in front of us, we're not doing our job. So I would have to vote against the motion. I would entertain moving it sometime during the month of November, but I think we need to have a meeting in November.
I would agree to have a meeting in November. I would not vote in favor of canceling that. We have already planned the presentations for the remainder of the year, so I imagine staff has been working on preparing those. And we've also just assigned something to the Education Committee that we were asking to come back to that next meeting. So also if we push that out, that puts that request from August all the way into December, and we're delaying getting back again to the public on that.
Any preference?
Mr. Chairman, if we do have a vote, I'm going to request a roll call vote, because I think it's going to be pretty close.
Okay. So the motion is to not have a November meeting. Everybody heard the motion? All those in favor of not having a November meeting, Poll the commission.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
Commissioner LaChance,
No.
Commissioner Tatonis,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoll,
No.
Commissioner Hodgson,
No.
Commissioner Cavey,
No.
Commissioner Green,
No.
Commissioner Temple.
Aye.
Commissioner DeVoe is a yes, so it looks like the noes have it. 5-4.
See you in November.
Commissioner Temple.
Are we allowed to make another motion?
Sure.
I'm looking at the calendar. I'd like to make a motion to move the November meeting from the third Tuesday to the second Tuesday. Third Tuesday is Thanksgiving week.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? The motion is to move the November commission meeting to the second Tuesday instead of the third. Any
Pending
further?
availability.
So is there any way to get that answer?
Now, who would be using this room?
Anybody, the agency, I mean, if it's not a big
Doesn't this
training
agency
law.
trump any other agency?
Yes, I
I
mean,
mean,
we
this
can,
is our building.
yes, it is. I mean, if law has a training with a big group plan, I just need to,
I have a rules hearing in this room that day on 14th.
so you've already got that posted.
Then it's yes, and someone
Can that be changed?
What time?
12:30.
So,
Commission meeting started at 2.
Excuse me?
Commission meeting started at 2.
What time per meeting?
12:30.
can I ask you- so it's open for discussion.
It is open for discussion.
If it is Tuesday the 21st, that the room's been booked, it's on people's calendar months in advance. Is there anybody who would not be here? I mean, are we gonna have a quorum if we? If everybody's traveling for Thanksgiving and there's not gonna be a quorum, then that's an issue, but I don't know that that's gonna be an issue.
You're a week in advance of Thanksgiving. I mean, you can't cook the turkey that long.
You mean keep it?
And that's why Thanksgiving's on a Thursday, the meeting's on a Tuesday, doesn't it, 2 days? I do the cooking in my house, I know it doesn't
You
take
can,
2
you can
days.
put it on 200 and leave and go back.
Are you saying keep it the third? Are you
I,
saying keep it?
yeah, I am, yeah.
Keep
We're gonna create a downstream trickle effect this far out to change it. And is there a problem that needs to be addressed, right?
Okay.
So we can take a vote.
Now, the vote is on what motion? We've already had the motion to change it to the second.
Yeah, but there's
No, no,
To not
It's
change
just
it.
a
To
second.
not change
It's
it,
just a
that's all.
motion on the table.
I think Commissioner Temple mentioned about making a motion on a
He did
different
make a
date. Well, we haven't
Yeah.
had a date.
The second.
Second Tuesday.
Okay.
Commissioner Price seconded it.
Yeah.
So the motion on the floor is to change it from the third Tuesday to the second Tuesday. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
So,
All right, let's go for a roll call. Commissioner DeVoe?
Commissioner DeVoe is a no.
no on the second Tuesday.
No on the second Tuesday.
Thank you.
Can I do it? Commissioner Temple,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
No.
Commissioner Cavey,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodgson.
No.
I don't have a chart.
Stoll.
Commissioner Stoll,
Yes.
Commissioner Tatonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavey, Commissioner LaChance,
Yes.
Commissioner Price.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yes.
Okay. So now we have a conflict because there's a rules hearing.
So may I make the suggestion you start at 2 o'clock or start at 1? How long do you think you need, Marty?
These are the higher education goals. So
Yeah.
I would say I would like to allow an hour. I don't know what kind of public participation we will get.
So if you started at 2, you would give her an hour and a half.
What happens if we start at 10?
too.
And what happens if we're not done and done?
What time is your rules hearing?
12:30.
I'm sorry.
12:30 is your rule hearing?
12:30, yes, sir.
If that is at 10, that would give us 2 hours.
So I gotta change the date for a committee meeting, correct? Because the room's not available for that either.
And I don't have all those rooms booked
Right.
on those days either.
You gotta make a motion.
I made my motion of not changing in the beginning. You created this.
We have to write a letter for your consent.
Can we meet at 9?
No, you're writing a letter.
I drive the furthest. I can make it.
For what?
That's what I thought.
10 o'clock.
On the 14th.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody want to vote on
I make a motion. Do it on the 10th. I mean, on the 14th at 10 a.m.
that? Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I don't see any. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed.
It's in stone.
Who's opposed? Thank you.
So November 14th at 10 a.m.
Correct.
All right. Any other new business? Seeing none. Commissioners report. They will report on their recent activities as it relates to Fish and Game Commission duties and responsibilities. This is an informational item only. Any commissioner have anything that they would like to say? Commissioner Caven.
I will be quick, but it relates to water again. Okay, I went to the NHIAA State Bass Fishing Tournament. Okay, 36 teams in the state, 12 teams make the cut. Was there for the weigh-in, and I mean, these students, they're all caught up in this. It was quite an interesting 2 or 3 hours that I spent there. But in talking with people again and listening, I have a question, and it relates to permits for fishing tournaments. And I know that fishing, the tournament permits go quickly, like overnight, as soon as they're available. Different, bass fishing groups and that sort of thing, they are on this. However, my question would be, the high school tournament is generally about the same time every year, first round, the end of September or the first week in October, whatever they choose. But is there any way that the NHIAA could get the right of first refusal on a body of water to host the tournament? In other words, if all the good bodies are taken up, and they have to go searching for a lesser body of water to host the state tournament. It's a question, we don't need to debate it, but I would put it out there for a question with regard to asking or obtaining a permit for the NHIAA fall fishing tournament. That's it.
I have one.
Commissioner Pratt.
I will be participating in the charity trap shoot at the Winnebago Sportsman Club to raise awareness for breast cancer. Our vice president, she's been battling breast cancer for several years now, and this has become an annual fundraiser in support of breast cancer awareness. So anybody would like to come out to Moultonboro at 10 o'clock this Saturday, it'll be a good time, and we would appreciate the support.
Anyone else? Commissioner Temple.
Yes, I took the chance or the opportunity to follow up on last month's meeting with Betsy McNaughton on the land for Aaron Webb. Took a field trip, went up there and saw for myself what we're getting to. And I think come June-ish, we may very well have another presentation with an adjoining piece of land. I understood that correctly, so nice area up there. Second of all, when we write the letter with respect to the water ski slalom course, John, I know you mentioned two that you knew of. One there.
I just learned of the other one, Mary Meeting Lake. So I'm told, I have to do my homework here.
And typically in the past, there's been one on the Connecticut River, just below Charlestown, which would be Cheshire County.
Yep.
So as we write this letter, it's not just about one lake, I assume. It's about the water ski course permits across the state, or in-state waters. Okay, just want to make sure. There must be more than two. I know there's 30, because I've seen the Connecticut River one.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other commissioners want to speak about anything in our activity? Oops. Diana?
Sorry to interrupt you, but I have a real quick thing, and that's by FIS. So I just want to make sure you know that all of our tournaments are first come, first served. That's by FIS rule. That's not something we can negotiate as far as providing favoritism to one or pinpointing areas. So just wanted to make sure you knew that beforehand. So if that's something we need to talk about, but that would be an FIS rule change. Okay.
Okay. Just because it's an FIS now, doesn't mean that FIS can't be changed.
Right, but that's what I mean. It's a proposal that you would have to do through FIS rule change.
Any other commissioners report? Director's report?
I hate to disappoint Paul, but we actually haven't had our biennial meeting yet. That lays before us, not behind us.
What was it that we had behind us? The season settings?
Yeah, the wildlife meetings. So biennial meetings, staff's been talking about having them in early December. Just wanted to see if the commission had any issues with that. Reminding the commission that these are a series of 2 meetings. One will be held in Concord and one will be held in Lancaster. By law.
I know, December. She almost killed me in the last one.
Oh, really?
They'll come to the March, she doesn't have to go out.
So just, does anyone have any issues with that, or we'll go ahead and...
I won't be here, I'll be on vacation.
Okay.
So we have biennial meetings, we have biennial season settings. They're both
Right,
biennial.
so what happened was during COVID, it shut down the rulemaking process for wildlife regulations. And when they started them back up, we always used to do rulemaking for wildlife on even years and odd years. By law is a biennial meeting, so I have to run the biennial meetings on the odd year. And the rulemaking for wildlife got moved into the odd year, and Dan and I have already started some discussions on how we might be able to move that back to an even year so that we're not having both, forever in the odd year.
So we don't get a year off.
You don't get it, well, yeah, that's right. Right now, you're working twice as hard in one year and then twice as less in the other year.
He wants to change next year now.
All right, so moving on, the department held the end of the summer employee barbecue. We started that tradition back up. We had a good turnout of staff, and I think everybody had a fun time. There was a, what do you call that, cornhole game out back. So everybody's showing off their cornhole skills.
Did you have a good time at that barbecue?
I didn't.
Did any of you have a good time at that barbecue?
We're not employees.
No.
We're invited.
They were threatened by my cornhole skills, so I didn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Diane and I met with the U.S. Forest Service to discuss the Berlin Fish Hatchery. Just to remind everybody, the Berlin Fish Hatchery historically or originally was a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Fish Hatchery, and it was built on U.S. Forest Service land. So we need to be working with them as we consider any construction projects up there. So this was an introductory meeting that we had with those folks. Attended 2 meetings in Pittsburgh this month concerning the Headwaters land. One was a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, and then there was another one that was input meeting for the forest plan, I believe. For the rec plan. I actually had never been to one of those before, and I'm not sure many people had that were sitting in the room. Didn't seem like there were a lot of people that knew much about that. So, okay. But no, there were a lot of people in the room, but, yeah. Attended, the evening after that, I came back downstate and spoke at the State Line Field and Stream Club in Southampton. If any commissioners are active in a local club and they'd like the director to come and speak or participate in an annual meeting, I would certainly be willing to. I get out to a few of them, but it doesn't hurt to try to get out to some more. Colonel Jordan told me he couldn't remember a time that we've had a director go to Southampton, so it's been a while for some of these clubs.
So you came down that far down south and you didn't say hello?
Well, I left from Pittsburgh, so I was in a bit of a rush to get there. I was a little late for the beginning of the meeting. Attended a House work session, on the committee to study adding non-amenable species and meat processing exemptions and the creation of meat inspection program. Dan was going to attend for the department and called in sick that day. The concerns that I listed for the department is increasing imports of wild animals to the state, controlling of offal to reduce the risk of disease spread, and not allowing the farms to turn into fenced hunting groves. And that completes my report. The other thing, you folks have all got this little pie chart, and Commissioner Hodgson was discussing this at a meeting a while back. I just wanted to remind folks that at this point, unlike some of our fellow state agencies, we are still doing fairly well in filling our vacancies. We've been able to fill, but at this point, we have not been able to fill our open chief of facilities and land. It's the requirement is they have to be a practicing engineer, licensed engineer, and that has become increasingly difficult. We're also starting to have some issues with some of recruiting our new people to work in our hatcheries. As you're all aware, we have increased our CO field force by 4. We have 2 new COs that will be filling the first 2 seats. They are finishing up their required hiring process, and assuming they both pass, we'll be offering them an opportunity. And we are currently, we will be interviewing other applicants for the other 2 positions, and we will be having a retirement in the field force, so we're actually looking for 3 more COs at this other event. Simple pie chart. All we did is we broke it down by years of service and numbers of employees, and then gave you a percentage. It kind of surprised me as far as how well balanced it is, and I think part of that is you hang out at headquarters, you see a little bit more gray hair, but then you stop and think about some of our folks at our hatcheries, some of our COs, you add them to the average, and it starts balancing back out again. So I would dare say the department seems to be fairly healthy at this point. And that finishes my report.
Any commissioner got a question of the director? Seeing none? Okay. It's the public's turn now. If you wish to address the commission, you address it towards me, but it's to the whole commission, any particular commissioner. Please raise your hand and you'll be recognized, and stand up, state your name, and then state your piece. Mr. Bosworth.
Weldon Bosworth, Guilford, New Hampshire. Surprised to see I don't see any lie detector here. After comments several months ago by Commissioner DeVoe that some of us are not sincere when we talk and testify here, I was deeply offended, as I'm sure other of the public was. Anyway, I want to go past that. My congratulations in the department getting that fantastic fisher study. I think that would be a great one. Spent 40 years basically approving research, and it looks like it's well laid out. I do have a question. How are you going to catch 25 fisher when you only trap 25 a year. Are you going to do it all year or what?
Catching 100.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna do that?
Would you like me to?
You got a number of trappers out there that,
Commissioner Bosworth, address the commission, not the staff.
oh, pardon me, I thought perhaps he was the one that was gonna answer. That's the question, how are you gonna do it? But more importantly, if you do successful do it, I would recommend that you tally the hours spent in getting those fish, because I think this is an important source of data, again, that would be comparable to or complementary to what we get in the trappers reports. Between that study and the one before, that was with the camera trap study, I think you have a couple of good studies there. I would say, though, that this is not an excuse not to take action now. As you've seen on some of the stuff that I presented to you, the fisher population is in real trouble. I've not seen any objective data that says otherwise. Even we show the same data about the coyote that concludes that it's a stable population. So I'd suggest that the data and the trends we see in fisher are the best we can do to make decisions on, and I would urge a decision be made. Maybe close the season until these two types of studies are completed. With regard to the coyote, I know my colleague Chris Shaver's got a lot of things to talk about. I hear a lot of the data that was pointed out about how many deer coyotes take, breaking down the statistics. I think we are in a situation where we either are ecologists or we practice biology. We know that animals out there, particularly predators, do kill deer, do kill turkeys. They kill mouse and rabbits too. If we broke down the prey of every one of these, we're going to see a good percentage of these species are taken as prey. That's the whole idea between the predator-prey relationship. To suggest otherwise is not science. So I think the bottom line, though, as was pointed out by Mr. Tate, the real 10,000-foot view is why should we be concerned? We see the deer population is healthy. I don't think you worry about that, how the coyotes do and how many they take until such time that you see something with the population happening. Then you do a little bit of exploration. People who are worried about coyotes attacking, there's only been 2 fatal attacks in the last 40 or 50 years by coyotes. In fact, on the average, only 10 people a year are attacked. Not just walking through the yard, they're actually attacked. This is compared to like 800,000 a year go to hospitals from dog bites. I can go into other statistics, but I just want to leave the concern that coyotes are going to be a real, other than maybe a public relations issue. Lastly, I wanted to say that we turned in basically a petition in March about closing the season during whelping. Since that was rejected here, we have gone a legislative route, and you will see a bill this year that proposes the same thing that our petition did. So that closing the coyote season for 5 months. Irrespective of the fact that our surrounding states don't have closed season, except for Massachusetts, or some silly thing about closing it for 1 day, we think there's a valid scientific reason for that. And I think that reason can be expanded upon by Chris Shaver here. But basically, it's like coyotes that can raise their young and kind of educate them as to what to go after for their prey, that lasts. And if we don't go out and upset the pecking order and the coyote groups and families, I think we're in a lot better shape. And by the way, I think the proposal to actually collect data, mandatory data reporting of all fur bearers that are not only trapped but also shot, I think that's a great step. Wish I would have thought of it. That's it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name's Anton Kaska. I'm out of Manchester, and I'd like to ask or recommend that the biology department, Pat Tate and crew, look into non-reported coyote kills. We've personally lost over $1,000 in sheep in the last 30 days. And we've killed 5 coyotes. The neighboring farm killed 4. We know we have 7 more. We've got them on camera, so we're just waiting to get them. And we didn't report it because I've done everything. I work with the feds over across the way a lot. And we've got fences with 7,000 volts, 4-wire. They still got through it and got them, and they take chickens. We don't report it. Now I will, because I know he's looking at that. But I know for a fact none of the other farmers in the area reported either. So that may be a source. I don't know how they would get that, the unreported farmer kills. Farmers talk, maybe the Farm Bureau or something like that. If they tally it, I'm not sure. We're not a member, so. But that's a recommendation that maybe they can get more data. Because that's just in the last month.
Thank you. Anyone else? Chris?
Okay. I won't take a lot of time. My name is Chris Stabler. Gosh, I am so sorry for the loss of your sheep. Having been a sheep farmer for 18 years, I understand. So I would suggest donkeys, and I'm serious.
My 18-year-old's not going to buy donkeys.
Well,
Address him.
who's?
Address him, not me. I'm
You
the
gotta
public.
talk to the commission.
Oh, sorry.
Not anybody in the audience.
Sorry. Anyway, I thank you, Pat, for the presentation. I learned a lot. I was sorry that I didn't hear more about the ecology of the coyote, because the ecology of the coyote is really what makes the animal tick. And, you know, we know that it's a predator, of course. So the fact that it preys on deer is not news. I was glad to hear Pat reiterate the fact that coyotes in the northeast, along the eastern seaboard actually, are not negatively impacting the deer herd. The statistic we go by is that in the spring, coyotes take about 30% of their diet is fawn. And so, I don't know, there were higher numbers mentioned. I would be interested to know, I would be interested to see where the research came from on the Connecticut issue. That's really interesting to me, and the rest of it as well. So would you tell Pat that I'd be interested in seeing that?
I think, Chris, you could work through the director, and he would make it so that you could speak directly to Pat.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And then, you know, there were things that I took a little bit of issue with. On the whole, and because I know everybody's tired and wants to go home, I'm going to reiterate the same thing that I've been saying for 25 years here, and that is that coyotes are not going to seriously impact the deer herd. The deer herd is so enormous now, they're saying 30 million deer in the Northeast, that foresters are having to build slash walls around regenerating forest stands to keep deer out. There was a great article in Northern Woodlands 2 months ago by John Levitas about that, and I would recommend that you read that. And the final thing I want to say is that as long as we have been in any kind of relationship with coyotes anywhere in the United States, we have created an image of this animal that seems to require that the only way to deal with it is to kill it. Whereas if you look at some of the research that has come out of Yellowstone, where coyotes are not killed, their population stabilizes. And as a former sheep farmer, I would advocate for a truly stable coyote population, which I truly believe we don't know. We don't know if we have or not, because we haven't done the work. And most states don't do the work, because we all know that the more you kill coyotes, the faster they reproduce. So, you know, it's one of those things that is unlucky for the coyote, that it can be that adaptable. But ultimately, killing is not a best management practice. Hate is not a governing philosophy for how to figure out how to deal with an animal. It has to be done through science. And you are the people, you are the ones that make the decisions about how these animals are regulated. And I know how long I've been studying them, and just reading a couple of articles doesn't really cut it. I think I would like you to have a deeper understanding of the animal, and I would love for this commission to be the commission that takes the fear out of the public on this animal. Because it's the public that's going to call you and say, oh my God, a coyote almost attacked me. Whereas, as you know, the coyote might have moved in front of them on a trail. And people are so fearful because they don't understand the animal. They don't understand when they den, for example, when they're likely to be aggressive if a dog comes up to it. So, you know, I'd like to see you guys do more. You're moving in the right direction. Thank you for that. I want to recognize that. I'm glad for the presentation. Tell that to Pat again. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Julia Sinclair. I live in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Newmarket is one word. I only mention that because on the minutes it was 2 minutes, that's all. I know I wasn't allowed to say anything then. I just want to point out the mindset that several of you have, maybe most of you have, and then maybe you could work on it. The mindset that you have seems to be represented by, like, a good example was your conversation, John, about the body of water and what was taking place in the body of water. You indicated that, you know, everybody who fishes there has a problem with these skiers. But the issue really is, the big question really is, how does New Hampshire
Well, twice. We're close. Commissioner Green. Your motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Then moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Commissioner LaChance, thank you again.